Hello, welcome back to the second of our Bible studies for December, looking at the book of Ruth in this Advent season leading up to Christmas. We are now looking at Ruth chapters 2 and 3. Last time we set the scene in chapter 1. We learnt who Ruth was, the daughter-in-law of Naomi. Although her husband has died, Naomi's husband has died. It's just these two women on their own who have returned to Bethlehem of Ephrathah, and we will now see what happens when they get back there and their dealings with the people of Bethlehem, who see both Naomi and in particular Ruth as outsiders. And the text constantly sort of reminds us of that. So Ruth 2:2, Ruth the Moabite said to Naomi, she's identified as the Moabite. That is how we should think of her, the Moabite, the outsider, the one who is in constant rivalry with Israel because they have turned their back on the Lord their God. But here she is in Bethlehem, trying to form a relationship with the people of Bethlehem, and in particular this man Boaz, whom we're introduced to, who is a kinsman of Naomi through Elimelech's family. That was Naomi's husband. He's not, we'll learn, the next of kin, and that's a particular legal term in this book, which we'll need to pay attention to. So the next of kin is the one who has the right to take your inheritance on the death of your father or husband, or the one who holds that share. So when we're talking about things like inheritance and share and right of redemption, fundamentally we're talking about land laws and property laws. This is about property transaction, but we'll see that actually there's a spiritual and social dimension to that in this book, which I think is quite important for us and for our faith. So Ruth the Moabite is an outsider, but Naomi says to her, go my daughter, my daughter. Naomi is not Ruth's mother. Naomi is Ruth's mother-in-law, but she says, go my daughter. So in that relationship, Naomi and Ruth, they do see each other as one family unit. That relationship is there, but it's not with Boaz. It's not with the people of Bethlehem yet. They have to do that. They have to find a way for Ruth to become part of the family of Elimelech, the people of Bethlehem, and the inheritance of Israel, spiritual as well as material. There are a couple of other ways that Ruth is characterised as an outsider. You'll remember that the book of Deuteronomy and the books that depend on it have this constant reminder to look with favour upon the widow, the orphan, and the stranger in your land. So those are three categories of people who require our special favour, looking after, because they are the most vulnerable. And Ruth could be characterised as any of those. She's a widow, her husband has died. She's a stranger in the land of Judah, in the town of Bethlehem. And in many ways she's an orphan too. She doesn't come with a father or a mother, although, as we've said, Naomi could in some ways fulfill that role. But she could be characterised as any of those, but she's not. And I think that's quite important. So she keeps being called the wife of the dead man instead of a widow. And later on in this book, she's called a foreigner, not the word for the stranger, the resident alien, that the book of Deuteronomy asks us to look after. So she doesn't have any way in the law of the Israelites to find a way in. She's got to do it by gaining the favour of the people of Bethlehem, so that they give her that as a gift. Interestingly, Ruth 2:4, we have this lovely little encounter between Boaz and his reapers, the people who are working with him. The Lord be with you, he says, and they answer, the Lord bless you, which is this reciprocal greeting which we still use, the Lord be with you, and also with you. So it's wonderful to see those aspects of our liturgy turn up in the scriptures, reminding us that all of the texts and the words that we use in worship fundamentally come from scripture. But I think we're reminded that in that interaction, the Lord be with you, the Lord bless you, there's an expectation of mutuality. So there's Boaz and there's the reapers, and we might expect this to be a sort of master-slave relationship, but it's not. This is a mutual relationship of them working the land together, and although Boaz might be the one who owns this particular parcel of land, the reapers are there to work it as well. And they have this reciprocal mutual relationship of equals. There's a servant mentioned in the text, so there are master-servant relationships in Israelite culture, but not with the reapers, who are men who would go out and gather the barley and the wheat. The men would gather the barley and the wheat, and the women would be allowed to follow behind and would glean what's left. So they're not allowed to reap, they're not allowed to cut the barley or the wheat down, but they are allowed to glean from the fields, following behind where the reapers had gone. And Ruth asks to go and glean with the women behind the men who are reaping. She's granted this. In fact, the servant who sort of pleads her case tries to make a case for her excellent character. Ruth 2:7. She came early in the morning and she's been on her feet since then without resting even for a moment. And that's sort of unnecessary. We're always reminded that we don't need to prove our worth. But the servant does this, and it doesn't seem to make any difference, I don't think, to Boaz's response. But we have this lovely little character reference for Ruth and how hard she's working. But that does serve to remind us that she is trying to be an upstanding member of the society. She is trying to prove her worth, and she's not trying to, as we've said, try to get on the inside through any sort of technicality of law, but simply trying to earn the grace and favour of somebody who can invite her into that society, in this case Boaz. And Boaz does invite her in, and 2:12, he says, in fact, may you have a full reward from the Lord, the God of Israel, under whose wings you have come for refuge. So Boaz is inviting her to take part in the spiritual and religious life of the people as well. And we get this lovely image of being invited under the wings of God, which we hear in other parts of the Bible, don't we? Under the shadow of your wings have I dwelt secure. We'll come back to that dwelling under his wings, because that comes up in a moment as well. But they glean together, they sit and eat together. Notice that at the mealtime, 2:14, Boaz says to her, come, eat of this bread, and she sits with the reapers. Not just with the gleaners, not just with the other women, but she's actually invited already to sit down with those who are reaping, and perhaps to eat some of the reaped barley, not just the gleaned barley. So she's already receiving this gracious invitation, through no power of her own, but through Boaz's grace, to take part in their rituals and their meals. Again, we can hear the resonances for our Christian life. And once she's gleaned in the fields until the evening, to 17, she beats out what she's gleaned, and it was about an ephah of barley. The idea here is that she's received an awful lot of barley, not least because Boaz has told his reapers to leave, deliberately leave some things behind for her to collect. So she goes back to Naomi, who doesn't know what's been happening, doesn't even know that she's found Boaz, and that Boaz is somebody who will look favourably on her. And she comes back with this huge, bountiful harvest. And I think we can hear the surprise in Naomi's voice when she asks her where she's been and where she got all this barley from. So Naomi realises that she is going to need to make Ruth part of society in a formal way, that this gracious gift to take part in the gleaning, to take part in the rituals and customs of society is all well and good, but she does need to formalise that somehow. We're going to need to find, she says, somebody who can redeem you, buy your part in society, because you don't have that right because of your birth. So somebody is going to have to pay for your inclusion in society, because that's how it works. So not only are we talking about redeeming land, but we're redeeming the people connected to that land. And whenever we talk about redeeming the people of Israel, which we do, think of the Nunc Dimittis, where those concepts are outlined again. It's redeeming the land, but redeeming the people connected to it. And when we think about land and people in our Christian faith, that takes on a new dimension. The whole world belongs to God, and we are the people, the sheep of his pasture. So we have introduced this idea that it might not just be the land that we buy, but actually the people connected to it, and that's how people were sort of categorized and surveyed in order to know who was in and who was out, which is exactly what happens at the beginning of Luke's Gospel, that Quirinius calls a census to work out which people were connected to which bits of land. So there we have another connection to the Christmas story. So chapter 3, Naomi encourages Ruth to go and make the acquaintance of Boaz. And we have this interesting story where Ruth goes to Boaz in the night after he's been eating and drinking in the threshing house. And it's sort of being set up that this might be a story where Ruth tricks Boaz into wedding her. We've had this story before. We've had it with Tamar, who I mentioned, comes up in the genealogy of Matthew. We've had it a number of times before, where the woman tricks the man into sleeping with her, and then she's carrying his child, and he's forced to look after her. So that the story looks like it's being set up to be another one of those, and it's not. And the text goes out of its way to sort of prove that that's not what's happening, even though it could have done. So Ruth doesn't try and trick Boaz into looking after her, but she does give him that opportunity to offer that care and protection as a gift. So she goes and she uncovers his feet. And there's a word in Hebrew for feet, raglaim, which means a pair of feet, which is used as a euphemism for genitalia. So we could say, well, uncovering his feet, is that a euphemism? But it's not, because actually we've got a different word for feet here. So again, the text is sort of deliberately making sure we know that this is not a euphemism, that there's nothing going on here, that Ruth lies down next to Boaz. She's uncovered his feet, so he gets cold and he wakes up. She asks him to spread his cloak over her. Now the words here again, they echo that under the shadow of your wings that we had earlier on. So there's something spiritual going on here, as well as something social and something practical. That Boaz is inviting Ruth to take shelter under his cloak, under his wings, to become part of his care. Spiritually, practically, materially, socially. And Boaz at this point pledges that he will act as her kinsman, who will buy her out, who will graciously and generously offer to do that. And again, if he'd been the next of kin, he would have done it, and it might have looked like he did it because he had to. But we get, again, another twist in the story that he acknowledges that he's not actually next of kin. There's somebody with a higher right of redemption. See, the story is sort of going out of its way to prove that Boaz's gift to Ruth is to be part of his inheritance. And that's what we know from the Christmas story, that by giving us the gift of his Son, Jesus Christ, God, by his grace, invites us to share in his inheritance. And it is a completely freely given gift that we cannot earn, but we have only to ask for and accept. So we'll leave the book of Ruth there for now. We've got another part of the Bible study to go, where we see how that story with Boaz and his kinsman plays out.